Hey everyone, it's Carissa Wiley at sprinkledwithglitter.com. Thanks for joining me today. Today I am continuing my Christmas in July celebration, and I have an adorable card project featuring some new products from Spellbinders. This is the Country Christmas Barn Etch Die Set. I also have the Country Christmas 3D Embossing folder. I love this die set because it not only includes this adorable barn image and the roof, but it also has some great tree images which can be used with the barn or on their own. You can also decorate your barn with some snow and some lights, which are all included in the die set. I'll also be using the brand new Country Christmas 3D Embossing folder. It is so beautiful, and I have a fun color palette picked out for today's card, including Sicily, Fern, Brown, which I can't remember the name of it. I have the black, and then I also have some Hero Arts Antique Ivory cardstock. I'll also be using the new Treasured Cardstock Assortment Pack. This is the Antique White. It includes a glitter cardstock, a matte metallic, this brushed metallic, which you cannot tell on screen, but it is so cool and shimmery. There is a mirror metallic. You can see you get 3 sheets of each of these different types of cardstock, and this is available in various colors, but I'm using the white today. Now, I also wanted to show you that on the Spellbinders website, there is kind of a die map available that shows you all of the various pieces and how those are intended to come together to build your die cut. And I think this is so helpful. I just pulled it up and printed it on my printer, but you can just pull it up on your iPad or your phone as you're creating. Now, when I'm creating with a large die set like this, I like to start with all the various colors of cardstock that I'm using and kind of lay out my dies on the various colors of cardstock to make sure that I'm kind of organized and sorted out. And once I know what I'm die cutting each piece from, then I'll start placing them on my die cut sandwich and running them through my die cut machine. So I have that brushed metallic white cardstock at the top, which I'm die cutting that snow line from. I've die cut a couple of the trees from the Fern cardstock, and then I decided I wanted a couple more because I think they can be used in so many ways. So I ran that through my die cut machine again. I also have the smaller snow pieces, which I've die cut from that brushed metallic cardstock. From the black, I die cut the roof as well as the barn doors and the windows, and you can see the detail layer is separate from the outline layer. So you can either cut these as a solid piece or with those kind of pop outs or negative portions that make the window panes and those barn doors. I'm die cutting the main part of the barn from some Hero Arts Antique Ivory cardstock, which is my favorite off-white. And I love this die because it creates debossed lines in the front of the barn to really make it look like it's made out of individual panels. Now, before I started hearing things together, I kind of like to do a dry run just to make sure I have everything that I need and make sure I know where I want to position each of these pieces. And before I put this together, I decided to do a little bit of ink blending on the edges of my trees as well as the edge of my wreath. So I'm using some Evergreen ink from Concord and Ninth and a small mini blending brush from Altenew to add some Evergreen ink to the sides of these die cuts. I think this just adds a little depth and dimension. And for this Sicily cardstock, I'm using Canyon Clay ink from Altenew to add a little bit of ink blending to that. Once I have my die cut pieces ink blended, I am going to use some liquid glue to start adhering things together. When I'm working with smaller die cuts like this, I do like to have some tweezers on hand, as well as like a dual-tipped embellishment tool like the Perfect Picker or that from Pinkfresh Studio. And you can see I'm using liquid glue to adhere all of the various layers together. I ran a line of liquid glue along the top of the barn, and then I added my brushed metallic snow piece, and I wish you could really see how sparkly this cardstock is in person. It is such a cool look. I took a couple of those snow pieces and added them to the top of the roof of the barn as well. And then I'm adding some liquid glue on that base of that barn roof, and then just laying the barn right on top of that. I'll also adhere one window to the left side of the barn, and for the doors, I'm just going to run a line of liquid glue on the outer part of the opening. You can leave this barn door open and add the trees inside, but I decided to have my barn doors closed. And then for my trees and my wreath, I'm using some very thin 1 millimeter thick foam adhesive to adhere these to the front side of my barn. And I also use that for the wreath as well. Now, it was at this point that I decided I wanted a little bit of dimension on that snow line on the front of my barn. So I die cut 3 additional layers from some plain white cardstock, and I'm adding liquid glue to the front of those. And then the piece that I'm laying on top is die cut out of that brushed metallic cardstock. So you'll get the shimmer on the front side of the snow line, but it will have a little bit of dimension to kind of give it some separation from the barn. To glue that in place, I'm just going right over the top of the piece that's already in place, and then I'll position that stacked up piece right over the top of that. For my sentiment today, I pulled out the Merry and Bright Sentiment Strips, press plate, and coordinating die set from Spellbinders. This is not a new product, but I love that you can get so many sentiments at once, and I'm going to be using this press plate to do some hot foiling with some matte kind of copper foil from Spellbinders. I've allowed the platform to heat up, and I ran this through the timer, and then I'm placing my copper foil on top of the press plate. And look, this foil started curling up almost immediately. And so I kind of left this in to show you how I fixed it because I was kind of fussing with it just a bit. You can see some foils just really want to curl up. And so I would recommend that you have your cardstock ready. But I just carefully rolled this out onto the press plate. You can see the press plate's still gonna work fine. Even though I'm fussing with it all of this time, it's not losing enough heat that it's not gonna foil. But I just kind of used the edge of the cardstock to kind of roll it out and place that on top. And once I had that in place, I grabbed the thin shim and spacer pad and I ran that through my Platinum 6 die cutting machine. And you can see it foils all of these sentiments at once. Now I use the coordinating one-piece die to die cut all of these sentiments, and you'll notice in the final card project, I actually redid the foiling on some Sicily cardstock. I thought it needed a little more color on this card, and so I brought it in the sentiment strip. I have a panel of craft cardstock here, and I'm going to run it through my die cut machine with this 3D embossing folder. In order to do this on the Empress, I'm just using one of the A plates and the magnetic B plate on top. So you just skip one of the A plates. I ran that through and this worked great. Now to emphasize the texture on this, I'm going to use a brayer and some Calico white ink from Pinkfresh Studio to roll over the top. And this brayer is just going to leave ink on the raised areas of this cardstock. It's a great way to kind of just emphasize that pattern. Now I'm going to set that aside to dry, and then I foiled this copper again onto the Sicily cardstock. Now I realize there's not as much contrast on this, but I really felt like it needed another little area of that beautiful orangey red color in this card project. You can see I'm positioning it there using, again, that 1 millimeter thick foam adhesive. And then I'm finishing off the trees with one more element of that burnt kind of red-orange color in these enamel dots. And these are actually Concord and 9th enamel dots. They are the spiced cider. They're not exactly the same color as the Sicily, but I think they worked out just great. I placed my barn onto the card front using some foam adhesive, and in order to make sure that this very textured card front sticks onto my card base, I'm using some 1-inch wide double-sided tape from Altenew. This is a very sticky adhesive tape. I placed it all over the back, and then I'm going to position this card front onto an A2 size card base. I did have to trim off a little bit that was kind of overhanging from the bottom of my card base when this was all said and done, but I love how this card turned out. It is such a kind of cozy Christmas vibe, just that down-home country Christmas feel, but with a modern twist by using that antique ivory and black for this barn. So there you have it, another card in my Christmas in July series for 2025. Thank you so much for joining me here. As always, I will have links to the featured products used in this project in the description at YouTube. So if you're looking for something in particular, you can check there, or you can head on over to my blog at sprinkledwithglitter.com. I'll have that linked below as well. Over there, you'll find more still shots, more information, and a complete list of supplies. As always, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this project, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications here so you don't miss any of my paper crafting, card making, and live stream video tutorials. Thanks again for watching. I'm so glad you're here, and until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day.